Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Chief Delegates meeting, number 11. Today's going to be a fun one. We're going to be going through some potential propositions in the bylaws, and I'll be sharing my screen so you guys can see as we go. We have this internal document that we've been working on, and we'll get through it. And please comment, help us shape what the bylaw should be in the future. I want to thank everyone for sharing your feedback this last week. It's been a really interesting week. I think we've all learned a lot just about governance and social discourse, and so I just want to thank everyone for participating and really caring about this amazing process that we're all about. So on that, let's just, if anyone wants to just say any intros, maybe short like reflections of last week if you want, or if not, we could just jump right into the bylaws.
Yeah, I'll fill the dead air. It's been a good week. Lots of back and forth, lots of engagement as we expected. Certainly many misunderstandings about sort of the difference between a proposal and an assertion of what we plan on doing. So glad we worked through some of that. And I mean, this is all about building consensus and getting feedback. So appreciate to all those who do so, and especially those who do so in a courteous manner, because I think that matters.
A message of support from Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. All right, so this may be a long one, guys. So let's jump right into it. And please allow me to share my screen.
Buckle up and get your popcorn. Going to do some bylaws.
Am I sharing my screen?
Yeah, epic Twitter Spaces there, Maxa, Chris.
Thank you.
Great energy to bring into this. It's just trying to make a lot of progress.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it.
Do you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So, for everyone, we have different color highlights here.
Jesse, can you zoom in, please? It's really hard to read.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How's that?
Much better.
And do like an F10 full screen too.
Oh, now it's
hold on. How's that?
There you go.
It's full screen.
If you slide over, you'd be able to see the comments. So if you slide to the right on the, yeah, there you go.
There we go. Nice. All right. So the green highlights are Reiki's suggestions. The yellow highlights came from Chris, and I have myself and Reiki, I think, have commented on the right-hand side. All right, so let's kick it off. Official community links and information. Are we all okay adding this to the bylaws?
I need titles for them. So I put the main links that I've found. I think it would be helpful for the CDs to have a list of what is official and what's not. So when new members show up and they're like, why is there so many websites? I don't know where to find the source of truth. And it's confusing. This is where we say, these are the sources of truth. And I think that has to be governed by chief delegates because we're in control of that process, of course.
So this website.
So yeah, the eoscommunity.org, weren't we phasing that out?
I have no control over that account. The main goal of having the Eden election site is to encompass all the content that's on the others apart from the member portal. So Eden election should be the only official one which we want any chief delegate to associate with, which links to all the things that any Eden member will need.
So you'd say there's no other official links?
There's two. There's Eden elections and there's the member portal where you.
Yes, that's
right?
correct. So
that's
member
the third
portal,
one here, I believe.
So there should only be two. There should be edenelections.com and then the member portal.
Yeah,
The
this
other
one.
redundant, and we don't have control over them.
Okay.
Just a comment on the eoscommunity.org. Fractally had that domain. It was transferred to us when we took over the infrastructure. So we don't have control over the actual website, but we do control the domain name. And
Can you redirect?
we could redirect or we could point to a different DNS. So like, genesis.eden.eos community, we control that namespace. So, we didn't build the website, we don't maintain the website, but we do have access to the domain.
Brilliant. So if you can, I'll speak to you after this meeting and get you the information you need to redirect it to edenelections.com. And that'll really help a lot. And then we have one website, one member portal. Perfect.
So as we agree on these, is everyone in agreement with these two websites as being on the bylaws?
Yes. For me,
I agree. Yep. Good idea.
Just speak your agreement. I can't see the videos. All right.
I agree.
Is there any reason we should probably have the Telegram channels on here as well? I know that Telegram, we don't really control those groups right now. That's something that's being discussed. Perhaps there's another community forum, not so much a website, but channels where people can chat. I think there's a lot.
Yeah,
of
I think that's a good point. I think the Discord. Eventually, we'll have the Telegram when we figure out. I think it's too early to say which one it is, or maybe it's not. And we have the Discord controlled by Dan Singjoy. Right?
I mean, yeah, I think the current one is there. That's part of my intention with so much of what I've added isn't to change anything, but just make explicit what already is. So if we're already using that Telegram channel as the official members one, yeah, I think we should add it.
All right, and then we can
change it. Yeah.
All right, I'll add the exact links later.
And that way we can add this without really being contentious because we're not changing anything. We're just adding important information.
Right. Okay. Next section, official roadmaps. Does this belong on the bylaws?
Why I think it does for just now is the CDs are in control of what's going on in Eden as best as I can tell. So,
I agree.
So who's going to say what Eden actually is? That question that comes up all the time in the Telegram channel, and it's been endless debates, and it doesn't really get very far because people don't know what this community is, and no one can join it because it doesn't have an identity yet. Who would be in charge of creating that identity? Just some circle? We don't know yet. No one's in charge of that other than us. So if people are creating it, previous CDs created that position paper to try to speak to this. So I think the CDs are in charge of saying that position paper is official or it's not, and then it's ratified by the next set of CDs, which represent the will of the community. So de facto, the community is saying, what is our position paper? What is our roadmap, etc. And then we're playing the role of the community by making them official or not. So I do think it's helpful having them here. So then when we make content and media, we talk about what it is, we can say what officially it is, rather than just what somebody wrote about it.
I think it's a good idea to have that on there. It's good to see that the Eden Smart Proxy is included on there. It's good to see that the whitelisting initiative that we have is on there. I think everything we want to achieve is on there, and we have time to review it as well.
Suggestion. So one thing I think for those watching, to be very clear, the way there's a rule in our bylaws that we'll skim past probably, because I don't think we're looking to change it, is that these things can't be piecemeal approved by the oncoming CDs. It is an all or none. If there is anything in here that someone's like, nope, so it all gets tossed. So one option, and this point you've raised, Reiki, what if we don't explicitly put these details on the mission state, on a bylaws, but we put a link to an ongoing live document? So it links to a source of truth, to your point, but it doesn't necessarily make it like that, whatever it says, like those are the missions. That is what we all have to take. Maybe instead it says, look, the CDs are in control of this with feedback to the community. It's live. Just a thought. And then it's a link to a document versus, yeah.
I don't support having this on the bylaws because it's very specific. And I believe there's enough members that are against setting an official roadmap. Look, I think it'll probably be squeezed in. because there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be passed. But I think this is safer to go Chris's route on this particular item.
So can we highlight it yellow, or let's choose a color we're highlighting that we're not going to add for our.
Yeah, we'll go.
I can move to someone. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, is it not still under debate and should possibly be yellow as up for debate, and then red is not happening or removed from the document?
Sure.
Okay. So that's what we'll leave it as, up for debate, and then we can run through and see how much we can get consensus around.
All right. The mission statements. So we have a global mission statement, and then we have 3 other mission statements. I'll just read them real quick. To experiment with and build the foundations for fractal, democratic, and decentralized governance on EOS. I think that's safe. To grow trust in EOS through civil protection, to navigate the journey from stake-weighted decision-making towards fractal democracy by providing fractal democracy tools for blockchain governance.
No. Sorry.
I think it's not, this one is probably not as safe. And then to help communities build their own versions of Eden, or whatever they may be, together powered by EOS.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I think
Yeah,
the bottom 2 are great, but they are what a circle initiative might be potentially. So a fractal aspect of the top overarching, more strong, direct mission statement. That's my input. Javier, it'd be good to hear your opinion on that as well.
Oh, yeah, don't close that comment, because that was someone else's. I think that was Stephane's from the Telegram chat. I put up their thoughts on this, because as we keep the open document, I want to open this up to other members to be able to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Give comments and see each other's comments and discuss, and yeah.
Okay. Noted. Sorry, Steph.
Oh,
All right, so I'm gonna put these in red. Anyone opposed? All right. Okay. Next up, we have Section 2, Part C. Election participants must turn on their camera and speak for a few seconds with the camera on at least once during their participation in each group round. I'd also like to read my rewording of this. Election participants must turn on their camera and acknowledge their presence by speaking at least once during their participation in each group round. I think this is critical, and I like my wording better, personally. What else?
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I like your wording better than.
Okay.
I'm indifferent of your wording is perfectly better than mine, as long as the point is there, which it is. So that's great. Thank you.
All right. This one's an easy one. Very critical. All right. Now,
Maybe leave a little yellow there, because the way we propose, if we don't have to, but if we follow
yes.
the previous submissions, the next set of chief delegates will receive a document that will have everything new is yellow, everything old is white. And so they'll clearly, and then we'll provide a clean doc, a marked up doc. At least that's what I did last time. So I'll take that upon myself.
Okay.
If we
So then,
it's easier.
Waxo, we should have a different color for still on debate then. How
That would be ideal. Yeah, yellow is like good, and another color is no.
Green is still in debate, red is removed, and yellow is accepted but changed, like for the next CDs to look at what has been changed, or any other members. All right. Why is D yellow, Chris?
Because we've added C, it never existed. So those D used to be C, E. So
Okay.
it just being very accurate, maybe too accurate.
Okay. So
you
this
should highlight that whole C section now, which did not exist. That whole section should be highlighted. Yeah.
got it.
That's a new one.
All right. Okay. Now, section F, I think we need to think about a little bit. So I'll just read it. The winner of each group round is responsible to upload a copy of the video from each respective group round. Failure to do so may lead to a dispute of the election room result and a subsequent claim for member removal. My comments are we should think about a time limit, something like you have 4 to 6 weeks to upload the video. And because we've had past issues with upload problems on the UI, that if you share the video in Telegram or Discord, then that qualifies as well. What do we think about that?
I think there's a 2-week limit system-wide right now. So that's what it's set to.
2 weeks.
Just to be clear. And I think that the more videos we have, the better. So I wouldn't want to make it like, everyone should keep a copy of what occurred, and then we can have multiple submissions of that video, and we have more, scrutiny over what occurred. So I wouldn't like to encourage people from uploading their video if they didn't win the round. And then you also have the technical difficulties that some people might encounter, so that someone might have won the round fairly, but the video download didn't work or something went wrong with when they hit record. So if someone does win the round and they were fairly elected, I wouldn't want them to be disqualified because of some technical glitch. So I just think that it's important for everyone in the room to keep a recording, and then that the winner makes sure that those other videos get uploaded as well, or kind of chases people down and say, hey, do you have a copy of the video you can upload? As long as we have one copy of the video, I think we're good. The more copies, the better. But if someone else uploads the video and we do have the copy, I think that's good. I wouldn't want to make it something like people win fairly, but because of this clause, they're unable to exercise as a delegate.
Yeah, I think so. That's what's recommended, but we have to mind, like, this isn't recommendations. This is the rules. And so that's why, the winner is responsible. They won. That's kind of always been the rule, right? This is something that's been unspoken that we've always sort of heard. It's always so even though the suggestion and the recommendation is everyone do exactly like you say, in the end, as far as like a rule goes, I'm okay with having it fairly linear like this, where it's like the winner is responsible. It doesn't have to be them who upload, it could be somebody else, but it's their responsibility as the winner to make sure it's done. Yeah.
So how about we just add the word is responsible to upload or obtain a copy of the video?
Or how about responsible to ensure the video is uploaded? So then possession doesn't even matter as long as it's there.
To ensure.
And add that 2-week limit because that exists. So I think all of our rules that exist ought to be in here as well. So maybe that's something for future CDs to consider is what are all these limits, like this 2-week limit Javi you just shared that exists that we don't know about. They need to be in the bylaws.
Yeah, great point, Rocky.
Yeah.
So we have the winner of each group round is responsible to ensure the upload of a copy of the video from each respective group round. Failure to do so within 2 weeks may lead to a dispute of the election result and subsequent claim for member removal.
The word may is kind of like, well, it may not. Like, will it or will it not? Like, it just may, right?
Well,
Sure.
that's the nature of this dispute resolution. So someone could make a dispute.
Oh, so then we should say that they can be disputed. Okay.
Yeah, that's why it says may.
Interesting. So okay, so that wasn't.
Someone's got to be willing to do it. I'm going to put up the $125. I'm going to get 3 members to agree, like the current process that's below in this doc. Yeah.
So maybe we've been waiting on Article 14 or whatever it is.
Yes, that's already defined in the scope in Article 14.
So, like, can we say may lead to a dispute as defined in Article?
Yes.
And then it helps connect that, and then we actually know the process.
Good point.
So it may lead to
as defined in
as defined in, yeah. And I don't think we need to say a copy of the video. It's just upload the video. Ensure the upload of the video, something like that.
To ensure the upload of the video, failure to do so within 2 weeks may lead to dispute as defined in Article 14.
All right, for clarity, it's Article 12. I just want to check.
Oh, thank you.
Should we add something like it should be the full video? Like, what if I upload 5 minutes of the 45-minute round? Like, does that?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't want to get too technical. Okay, I uploaded a video.
It's not necessarily the full video. It could
The
be the
official-
part of the video that's important, right?
Should they upload the official election video?
Yeah. Which contains the part when we were disputing. I mean, you could get very specific.
What
I
is
think,
the official video? Everyone has their own copy. Which one's the official?
Well, all right, but you guys are all talking about what happens in Article 12. So we call it official. If you have a dispute for that, bring it to arbitration. We don't need to define it here because we have a process.
Okay.
Otherwise, this thing gets 30 pages long, as we say, and it has to contain.
Yeah.
Right. I think this is. Are we all okay with this? How it is?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to just keep.
Yep, keep it highlighted.
Oh yeah, keep it highlighted right away. Okay. Next. I support this. Elections shall occur every 3 months or may be triggered by a petition of greater than 2/3 of all level 1 delegates. I read in the chat that this may not be technically viable right now. Javier?
I believe that there is a role for level 1 delegates to trigger the snap election. And technically, all CDs are also level 1 delegates. So, we went through that first round and then made it to the second. So if you keep it as all delegates, that does include level 1 and chief delegates, right? So I don't know if it's necessary to specify level 1 as all delegates includes, everyone, right? So
It should probably say all delegates excluding chief delegates, because if we have 197 participants, we end up with another layer. So there'll be level 1, level 2, and chief delegates. So do we want level 1 and 2 to have equal vote in calling this action? I think yes, but we want to exclude the CDs, or maybe they can be included too. I don't know. Depends on what the purpose is. But
I also would want to be 100% sure how this works on the contract, so we know that we're not changing something that isn't aligned with the software itself. I'm sure it is. I'm pretty sure it is. Let's just make sure.
yeah, Leister commented in the chat there, and he I mean, maybe could check some more, but he seemed to only point to the fact that you can call an election. It's the chief delegates active perms that actually call it. It's not through a global vote. There's no way to trigger a global MSIG style vote. Like, I don't know if this is even in the contracts.
Yeah. So in that case, it should be removed.
Let's take a closer look at that. And
All right. So this is going to be in green. And remember, we don't have much time to do this, but let's move
I know
on.
that if the head chief delegate is removed, that triggers an election. So if for some reason the community decides to remove the head chief delegate, we're going to call an election. So there is some mechanism where these elections are called that are not through the active perms. But I'd like to just verify.
Yeah, that'd be great to verify that and change Article 3 to that. So let's speak to what the contracts are right now and just update this, because this doesn't apply. Yeah.
But I understand, Chris, why you wrote it that way, to hold CDs accountable if the L1s don't like what the CDs are doing. But I don't think it's possible right now, but maybe something for the future.
That seemed to be one of the things that in the recent discourse was this idea that the CDs are bad, right? And some of the things we were proposing make us bad, which is fine. Everyone's valid to that opinion. So it's like, how do you manifest, how do you exercise this? If we do have a corrupt set of chief delegates who have the lion's share of the power and the money and blah, 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 how are they recalled? And so the idea that, just to put it out there, is that not all Eden members have to participate, because we have low, basically, participation issues, but at least the level 1 delegates are being paid. So there's some incentive to participate. And maybe one of their jobs that we start to define for them is to be watchdogs and to hold the chief delegates accountable. So that's why that's there. This was always here, by the way. I didn't add that. I only added that one line about level 1. This exists as it is right now in the bylaws. It's here. I just wanted to clarify the idea that chief delegates shouldn't get to vote. So I added level 1, and then Lenny made the point, or someone else made the point about what happens if we have more than one level. Okay, well, level 1's no good. We should maybe include level 2. So that's kind of the background.
Got it.
So
All
if
right.
it's staying there, I agree. The only addition should be excluding chief delegates.
No, but it needs to be totally changed from what's reflected on the code right now. This is
Yeah.
not possible in the code.
I'd like to see that, because I think chief delegates are also considered level 1 delegates, because we did make it to that first round. So there might be some contract.
I think what we could do here is this triggers an election. Maybe what we do is just make it 1/3. So if we're talking about future changes to this, we can lower the threshold so that the CDs don't have to participate in recalling it, right? But anyway, I think what we can do is just remove this, have Javi say what it actually is, and then leave it to the next round of CDs to figure out how to phrase this and what we might actually create here.
Agreed.
But then we can, Chris, if you want to add it into the community doc that's open, you can add what you would say there for the level 1 delegates and what they can do. But we'd have to go back.
The other thing to consider is, does everything here have to be represented in smart contract? And I think there is, and the answer really is no, because we have, for example, member remove. That's not smart contract. There is a subjective aspect of this, and there is a way to call a snap election.
Member remove is almost going to be smart contract.
Not the process, though. So a lot of the wording that exists.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because if I read this as a member, I think that delegates have this power. But if chief delegates are really the ones that have that power, then that's not actually true. Because if they're corrupt, they're not going to call the election on themselves.
Right. So that's where
we're speaking to something that's not true. I think we should remove it.
Well, but I see your point. However, this is where it's like, there's things that aren't going to be perfectly in code, and we have to use the fact that the rules say this, we should be following the rules, but it's not really, just like the idea of us pulling money. It's not explicitly here, but it's socially understood we won't, right? So there's that piece to it. So if we had this as a rule that's here, that's worded, maybe we leave it as is. We hope that the chief delegates abide by this subjective vote that we do via consortium that uses only member accounts. I don't know. Because it's a valuable rule, it's just not in code. And maybe then there's a runway here to get Javier and Adenia to quote and scope what's it going to cost to add this. And we just kind of present that to the next set and say, look, here's the scope of work, here's the cost. Can we do a Pomelo pitch to raise to improve the open source code, although that's had issues in the past, or some other way to fund improving our code. So I see, but maybe we remove it until that's done. So it's chicken and egg, to your point, maybe, Rick.
Yeah, I'm on the ladder on that.
I have a middle ground, interesting idea. We can use a code here. Maybe it's in bold if it's in code. So we bold statements that are reinforced in code, and we italicize statements that are, we hope CDs do this. So we make a clear distinction. So when a member is reading this, they know what's enforced versus what's expected. And,
I think that this should be on a separate document. Chris, what you were saying about there are other things in these bylaws that are not backed up by code, but the difference is, like for the dispute resolution, that's actually executable. Like that's possible because we can do it off chain. This, I guess you could do this off chain, but it's much harder.
You could do the voting on chain via consortium. Only level 1s could be invited.
No, but you can't actually trigger an election on chain, though.
That's the only part which we don't necessarily need to enforce. That's not what the bylaw actually states.
I think it does.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe triggered.
Yeah.
Election. Maybe.
Might not be. I think it's fine.
But they actually can't do it, though.
Well, the L1s can't trigger the actual chief delegates they can't force the chief delegates to do it, as we just discussed. But what they can do is show 2/3 of the L1s have this concept in mind, and then it highlights the problem.
If that's what we wanted to say, then we need to say that.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of layer 1 delegates get together, they can petition the CDs to snap an election, So we can say that that's the process in the...
That would work.
So maybe that needs to be rewritten into what it actually is.
So let's move on from this. We have to go back to it.
I'd like to check the code as well, and I think I agree with what Chris says. We don't necessarily have to have everything in code that's in the bylaws, but the bylaws should also not call or say something that the code does not allow to do. So
Right.
we do have to. I'm pretty sure there's a mechanism for this that was in the original release of Eden. I just want to verify, and we can get back to this, so we can move on. And I'll make sure to check this later today.
All right. Okay. We have this is a comment, Reiki unnecessary. Head chief delegate funding allotment will be equal to what a regular chief delegate will receive. I do believe this is necessary because of how it used to work, Reiki.
Yeah.
The head chief delegate used to have a different allotment. And this is a code change, and this is now reflecting what's in the code.
Right, but it's only speaking to something that used to exist. So I would call this bloat that you would see in contracts that speak to historical things that new members don't need to know.
No, this does exist now.
No, my point is why do that new members need to know that? If they weren't said that they're going to get a different pay anyway, then why are we saying that?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There's no need for that anymore.
It's not in the
So
contract anymore.
I kind of agree with that, actually. Anyone else agree or disagree?
If it's not
I
in the
like the
contract,
idea
I
of
agree.
minimizing changes and getting rid of any unnecessary bloat. So the less words, the better.
All right. Thank you, Ray. All right. Now we have delegates' rights and responsibilities.
You shouldn't just delete that. You should highlight it and then we'll strike it through.
Yeah.
Right, because the next set need to be aware of what they're accepting. And this deletion, there's not a great way to, I don't know how to do strike through in Google Doc. If you change the font to like a gray, perhaps, and then make it yellow. Because that way they'll know what they're changing. And one of the changes is delete.
Got it. Okay. Delegates' rights and responsibilities.
So I tried to keep this very simple, and this is as best as I can discern from all the chatter. But this is what's actually expected right now. So I'm just trying to make that explicit so that when people are saying you're expected to do X, Y, Z, we have something to point to in that scenario, right? But also new members understand what they're agreeing to. You know, when they get elected to chief delegate, they're like, okay, what does this actually mean? And then you can spend, anyway. So this is what one single source of truth we can point to say this is what you're actually expected to do. And a lot of constitutions like to state rights and what members get, etc. This is just making those things very clear. What I've done here also is not try to add anything that's controversial. I just tried to keep it what actually exists and then leave it open for future CDs to get into the more interesting controversial things and to expand here or contract here if necessary, right? So this is where a lot of conversation within the community can focus as we evolve what our rights and responsibilities, etc., are as members. So thoughts on this section?
On A, a right and equal share, a right to an equal share of chief delegate disbursement to utilize, and I think it should end there because examples are, in my opinion, equivalent to the bloat of the previous one above, because if it's not limited to, then it can be those or anything else, and therefore those there are irrelevant.
That's also why I put it in italics, as this is just helpful information. We could also make it really small. I think this is, again, new members are showing up here. They like read the bylaws to understand how to play the game. They'll read this and like utilize to do what? What does that even mean? So like giving them some basic examples of what mostly happens with this anyway. And that's why you're saying it's not limited to this, of course. But again, this is helping you understand how to actually show up here and create here, right?
Okay, cool.
I think C and D are repetitive, personally.
I was thinking even the word to the to utilize part is unnecessary. I mean, they just get their share of it.
Yeah, I think that's the original vision as well. People should not be restricted. If they get elected, they should, use the funds as they feel more, provides most value. I like the idea of keeping possibilities open for different delegates to do different things and having, as an experiment, different views, objectives. I agree that it's not necessarily good to define where funds should be spent. It's really up to the delegates to do that. One thing I mean, so spending is not something I'd like to get too specific on. I do think that CDs need to show up to calls. I do think that CDs need to engage with the community in a certain level and sign
Oh,
multi-sigs. So, I mean, it's not like you get elected and then you don't show up. Well, we do expect you to show up, right? So that's the least you can do. I mean, tell us what you're doing with those funds.
so how about participate? Because that is an expectations, right? Participate in weekly calls.
Well, if I would add that as C down below, that would require its own section, not as an
We
example.
Yeah.
we do weekly calls, and it's been traditionally what's done. But maybe CDs want to talk every day, or maybe CDs want to talk, every 2 weeks. I don't know. I mean, I think they should be participating in scheduled calls with other chief delegates.
Is it fair to say that chief delegate disbursement should be spent on the benefit or towards the common goal of Eden, or something along those lines?
I think they should all be spent around, not necessarily Eden, but I mean, it's Eden on EOS. I mean, what we're doing is trying to promote EOS and
Yeah.
foster the growth of EOS, not really just Eden
So to be spent on Eden on EOS.
or EOS network.
So a right to an equal share of chief delegate disbursement to be spent on
Eden on EOS further development.
Well, now we're saying very explicitly. So we started off, don't be explicitly.
Development, yeah.
Now
Just
this is
development.
very clear on how to spend
If this
it.
is funded by
Only
EOS,
thing to spend it. So I would say, I liked it at leading it at you get a share of the disbursement, putting really small examples include, and it's just italicized. This is not necessarily the contract that you're agreeing to. This is just helpful information to know. And then we move on.
But shouldn't the funding be spent on Eden progression? It shouldn't be spent on anything else, right?
There's a suggestion by Joshua, which might be interesting to consider. Use funds to benefit the members and the mission.
yeah, but
Yeah,
no,
because the mission
is
can be
like-
determined by chief
yeah,
delegates,
the mission.
or
Um,
what you're proposing, right, earlier on. with
That's
the-
nice. Yeah. A disbursement to be spent on the mission. And then the mission makes it explicit what that actually means at the beginning of this. So
Yeah.
no, I disagree.
Or what should it be spent on then?
It should be spent on any project that helps Eden and or EOS.
Not projects necessarily.
Again, I think we shouldn't get too involved with what the money should be spent in. I mean, you get an equal,
that's my vote too.
and it's up to them. We trust those elected delegates to make the best decisions.
So, section C, funding quests. I see that as donating to other projects. I see those two things as redundant. That's why, Reiki, I initially replaced this one.
Yeah, it would require a little bit more active here, but you can imagine layer ones coming up with their own ideas, anything from an art contest or anything else for a way of distributing EOS to other members of the community, having fun building it. So it's a different thing than donating to projects like through Pomelo or funding your own personal projects. So
Well, maybe
it's a category, but we don't have to add it. I'm fine with it.
in these examples, perhaps we should add funding personal projects on EOS. Right, so it's not like I'm going to build an extension to my house, right? I'm actually doing something for EOS, right?
Yes.
I thought that was assumed, but you're right. Maybe that is definitely worth saying. Yeah.
Everything on EOS, yeah.
Um,
But we're still saying that you're not limited to this, so it's all pointless anyway.
Exactly.
Apart from helping new members get a guide on what others are spending their money on.
That's true.
so that's why we should put it here on
Yeah.
EOS
Yeah.
to be spent on EOS.
And then you're not limited to, that's a massive scope, and it keeps it. Every mission statement should be aligned with that. And if it's not, then it's just not even on EOS anymore.
And then we could also make it smaller. So it's not seeming official. Make sure it's italicized. There you go. Maybe not that small.
And the keep it for participating in Eden, isn't that like similar D and E? Can't we consolidate those two?
Yeah, we could just get rid of that. Yeah.
Also like the idea of fostering the participation in Eden. So, I mean, maybe it's not about a personal project or anything. It's just about attracting new membership to Eden, right? Like that's something.
Well, that's a project.
That's a project. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Section B. A responsibility to maintain the Eden Chief Delegate keys and to make considered decisions when signing multi-sig requests.
I think we can say keep the keys private, or keep the keys safe, or keep the keys like. You don't want, you got to be careful with your keys if you're a CD, right?
To maintain the safety of, like that.
I think it's a bit better. I don't know if it's perfect, but I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts.
Responsibility to maintain the key safety. What are considered decisions?
Informed decisions?
Community informed? Is that what that's meant to be? By considered, are we talking about the community's consideration? Or are we talking about decisions with purpose and precision, for instance, and pre-thought?
Or responsible decisions?
It probably shouldn't say keys either. It should be permissions. That often becomes a conflated term. So I don't care, but I've heard some people say they're not keys, they're permissions. Okay.
Or authorities?
And it's just the active permissions, right? We don't have owner, so we could even say active permissions.
Maybe we could talk about making a concerted effort to find, well, you have to anyway, to get the 2/3 consent or agreement to pass anything, which is a super majority here. So are we speaking to this and saying it is your responsibility to attempt to create consensus? Or do we just say explicitly what we're doing is it's your responsibility to find 2/3 agreement on multi-signature requests? Or do we not speak to that at all? But that is part of our role here as chief delegates to find what could have that 2/3. So we could speak to that explicitly because it's what's already happening.
So instead of considered decisions, 2/3 plus 1 decisions, right?
And there's a process. So it's like, yeah.
Everyone okay with that?
Well, when we're 5 delegates, it's 4 out of 5. When there's 4 delegates, it's 3 out of 4.
Well, that's why I put 2/3 plus 1.
Should all multi-sig actions require a notification to the community in the form of any form of communication?
I think it's probably up to the whatever chief delegates are at the time.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to put this yellow. All right, section A, to sign multi-signature proposal, to pass off the permissions, the active permissions to the next set of chief delegates when elected.
One of the reasons we haven't automated this is because there's like a manual check, like, okay, the election occurred, now we're going to sign off the keys. And it does include like another step for scrutiny, or in case something did go wrong, the system's not automatically just going to sign off keys to someone. So it does require a manual intervention, and we didn't want to automate that because we see it more of a feature than we don't necessarily want to automatically assign keys over. If something goes really wrong in an election, we have a bunch of bad actors that want to drain the treasury, and they win the election, all of a sudden the keys get signed automatically, then they can do it. But if there's a manual step saying, okay, you won the election, but now we still need to sign the keys over to you, I think, yes, it's important for CDs to do peaceful handoff of power or authority, but that manual step is a feature. It's meant to be there.
I got that. I
agree with that, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, next, 6.2, L1 delegates, a right to an equal share of the L1 delegate disbursement to utilize, what did we say here? To be spent on EOS.
We could probably kill the whole utilize part, right? They just get a share of it. We don't have to.
Well, what we put
qualify
up
what
here for the chief delegates to be spent on EOS.
to be spent on EOS. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. That seems incredibly broad.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
As long as it keeps it within the ecosystem and isn't spent on fixing your
Right.
own car or something.
Right, on exactly.
On chain. Do we say
Good,
on
good
chain?
luck enforcing. So what happens, we've seen this, chief delegates, we saw this, a few of the L1s who are, a couple of them aren't as vocal, took that big lump sum that all the L1s got too. Just to point it out there, the CDs weren't the only one who got a large disbursement this last round. The L1s did. And straight to an exchange. So,
But they could be
delegates.
paying themselves to work on EOS.
it's unenforceable is my point. It's entirely in the realm of speculation. So to put it as a code, like a rule in the bylaws, I think we're involving ambiguity, which is not a great idea in bylaws.
Okay, that's a good point. Anyone else think that's a good point?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can keep it in the examples. I just don't want her to go off to fund something on Solana or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah, it's true, but in the end,
It's not enforceable. It's not.
our mission speaks for itself, and that's every member supposed to be pushing to drive value for EOS. So that
Correct.
it's the first thing at the top of the document.
True. All right, so that's good. Section B, a responsibility to participate in Eden's dispute resolution protocol detailed in Article 12. That's an important addition. I think. All right, and now, I'm a little confused here. If we hit 187 or whatever it is, the L2 delegates made it to the second round or the third round?
We discussed the terminology of L1 delegates also includes Chief 1 delegates, right? So why don't you just put delegates and then leave 6.2 to remove 6.3?
Okay, and then this would have to be an equal share of the delegate disbursement, right?
You could probably just remove 6.3 altogether and put LN, indicating, and then they get a share of their LN delegate disbursement.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's now involving some math, and people are like, "What does that even mean?" But
L.
you know math,
How do I do that?
Why I added it was just in case each layer might have unique responsibilities, i.e. layer 1s are participating in the dispute resolution protocol, layer 2s might have a different task or something they participate in, right? Maybe they're focusing on social engagement or whatever. I don't know.
We're not at that point yet.
But anyway, if we're not at that point, that's just why it was kind of there. Last piece I like with, never mind. We're speaking to what exists, so I'll leave it. I will add this, never mind, because this is an interesting point. There's a story about why the Asian empire didn't conquest as much as the Western empires did. And one person was speculating it's because of their maps. The Asia maps had a pretending that they understood the whole world. Like from their perspective, the world was totally known, even if they hadn't seen the whole thing. But the Western maps were left blank spaces. They kind of alluded to this is the unknown that we don't necessarily know about. So sometimes when you're building game guides, you might leave it open, especially if it's an infinite game like the one we're playing. This kind of like tells members that it's an evolving document here that's room to grow and add and create with. So that was part of my thinking too when I add these things is we're saying what our rights and responsibilities. So as members read this and we're leaving things open, like the C spot open, like what could go here, we're like expanding our capacities and building the game and we're growing, right? That's one idea, but we don't have to run with it. It's just part of my thinking.
I really like that explanation. I think that's great. So maybe you do L1 and then LN, because that actually defines exactly that point. N stands for an infinite number, an infinite set of numbers.
I agree. Chris, quick question. If there are L2 delegates, how I still don't understand what responsibility they would have in dispute resolution.
It is not defined, man. So I don't know. I mean, so what we could do, we could update the dispute resolution to say that all delegates other than chief delegates are thrown into the pool to be randomized into jurors. Because in the end, we're just taking delegates who are paid and they're paying a little more attention. So they become the pool of potential jurors that are randomized. That's the intention that when I wrote that. So,
all right, let's go ahead and add that real quick. So, jury, all delegates except chief delegates, right?
That would be correct. Yeah.
All right.
You should highlight that.
I like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Whoops. All right. Where are we? How should I express LN? Like
it's just L and then lowercase n.
all right.
So instead of a number, you just do n. There you go.
All right, perfect. Next, section 10. This has a comment. The CDs may not create any.
I'll tell you what I've done here is I'm suggesting getting rid of number 10 and adding it to the new number 10, which is in green below. So saying the same thing that happens here, but making it a list of things so that it's not an entirely new article for everything the CDs may create with a 2/3 vote. So instead of saying they may not create it without, we're actually empowering what the CDs can do with a 2/3 vote. So that way we're saying what authorities we do have, rather than leaving it explicit we could do what, or implied that we could do whatever. And then this is where we can actually detail those powers. So I changed Article 10 to say the CDs may take the following action with a greater than 2/3 vote to create any .eden namespace. Okay, so that's what all 10 said in a different language. And then doing the same thing to link what 11 said as well. So that's kind of a lot of changes here to simplify what we're trying to say.
I'd like to comment something on the .eden account. Currently, it's controlled by Genesis Eden Active, or this group of CDs, or any future group of CDs. But potentially, further on, if we have other Edens with other groups of CDs, they all fall under the Eden namespace. But right now, it's Genesis Eden is the only active keys that control Eden. But in the future, we might have other Edens that can be part of we can have multiple active accounts, right, of the different Edens. So it's not really the set of CDs who control the .eden. It is right now because this is the only official kind of Eden that's running. But if we do have other Edens in the future, those CDs will also control the Eden namespace. So there's a few differences with that because it's across all Eden groups that might be formed. And the other thing is that you don't create an Eden namespace; you create an account under the Eden namespace. So the .eden is the namespace. You would create an account under the Eden namespace. And yeah, right now it's 2/3 of this group, but in the future, it would have to be an MSIG that includes the active keys for this group, plus the active key for, say, Korean Eden, or Spanish Eden, or Italian Eden.
Well, the CDs will add that later, Javier.
Right.
Okay. So this makes sense to remove this line, as Reiki suggested. Anyone object? All right. So now.
We got to Control Z that because we'll just do the different colors again.
Oh, because this was already there, right?
Yeah, I'll turn this into gray.
This is gray in the yellow highlight.
And then that will be yellow.
Got it.
This too. Anyway, you can keep going.
All right. So, wait. This is. Let me. There we go. Okay. We have. This was already there. Reduced. So section B, reduce the treasury. So the word disbursement was added.
No, that's the same language that we said down here, reduce the treasury disbursement. So I just took Article 11 and now made it a bullet point. So we can reduce all this text into, we can do this, right? So again, I'm not changing this capability or what the document's saying. I'm just simplifying it by turning
Right. You're making a list. Yep.
into a bullet point.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And I would be proposing to actually remove all of 11. So that would be, yeah.
I think it's great, by the way, what you've done here, Reiki, in terms of making that affirmative and then putting all these together. So thank you for your additions here. It's really good.
Yeah. Treasury disbursement increases must be proposed and ratified. All things must be proposed and ratified, if not otherwise explicitly said, right?
Yeah, and I think this one is it's so important that we actually just make it explicit for this particular one.
Okay,
so that's what I was actually proposing. We change Article 11 to.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So then Article 11 is saying what we can't do without, may not take within their term.
Okay.
So this is kind of what we're not empowered to do. So we can start making some of those things clear as they come up in, previous series, so we don't have to keep repeating this.
Just a shout out to Josh, who's been giving us lots of feedback. We should throw it on your screens, just to bring it up. Why not explicitly empower the CDs to distribute funds to any account that has been approved by a 2/3 consensus of all delegates? So it's tricky. How do you get that consensus? But I think it's a valid thing to put on the screen. Thank you, Josh.
If we need 2/3 consensus to create a .eden account, then OPEX can fund any .eden account. Like it already has the 2/3 consensus. So what it says, distribute funds from the OPEX account to operational circles within the .eden namespace, or operational circles accounts within the .eden namespace.
So I think what Joshua was adding is that all the delegates are kind of like our Congress, so we can propose to do something, but then the L1 delegates, we need to get 2/3 of them to agree as well. So then it's not just.
That's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. I think. Yeah. It's the big
and say if we can get 1/3 to reject it, because if we're having engagement issues, if 1/3 of delegates can rally themselves together to shut it down, that might be a more interesting proposition. That chief delegates can make a proposal, and if it's not shut down within a week time frame, then it stands, so that it can't infinitely delay us. But then that's just a social thing that chief delegates agree to. They say, okay, we have these powers, but we're going to let it be, checked by the layer 1 delegates if they achieve 1/3 vote to reject our move.
I don't think it's time for, unfortunately, new ideas.
It might be too early for that, yeah, because this is something that is different than what currently is.
We wouldn't be able to get feedback on any new ideas. So I think we should just leave it as is. We can distribute funds from OPEX to any operational circles or .eden account or any member, right?
Well, Dania gets paid for the infrastructure from the
OPEX.
Their account is not a .eden account. So,
So 2 circles or other Eden member accounts.
Or Eden vendors, service vendors, or I don't know.
But then we'd have to have a list of service vendors. So, if we're wanting to restrict this, then I would say it only can send funds to a .eden account. And then chief delegates need to set up new .eden accounts and fund those with certain permissions. So we need kind of a process for how we do this, which we could add all of that. It's not too much of a process. We just say there has to be a .eden namespace, which we have the powers currently to create. And I'm only saying we to chief delegates who would be in this role.
Yeah. So this should be chief delegates, right? Is this under chief delegate?
It is already, yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. And we
can type that out if you want. Yeah.
One interesting thing that could be done. I'm sorry if I'm deviating a bit, but you can add weights to MSIGs. So you can have a certain amount of time before that MSIG can get executed, and then L1s or other delegates. Part of what is expected from them is to check the MSIGs within that time window, and if there's going to be a transfer, they have enough time to kind of check what these, whether it's an invoice payment or what's being funded, by allowing like a certain time wait, and then expecting L1s to kind of just keep an eye on the different MSIGs that are happening, and speak up with enough time to do something about it. It's just an idea, but I don't want to complicate things more than necessary.
I think that goes into the recommendations. Okay, so we have distribute funds from the OPEX account to operational circles with a .eden account. And then for the future, then, if Adenia continues to be selected as the infrastructure provider, then they should get paid through like the development circle, for example.
Right. And then we create .eden accounts for all the circles, i.e. where it's going, and that's how we start creating our budget trail of where we've spent funds as well, because we can say, okay, we've sent 80% to the .eden dev account, and we've sent 20% to the .social account, right? Eden
Right.
Social, yeah.
All right, everyone good to move on? Okay. So we have a grayed out section 11 and then another section 11. Oh, I see what you did. Okay. So this would be also grayed out then too, right, Reiki? Because you have it.
Yeah, and that was actually a suggestion, so you could just delete that.
All right. So in terms of this new section, okay, I'll just read it and then, if not explicitly stated in Article 10, the chief delegates may only take action for proposing an update to the bylaws detailed in Article 4 that explicitly empowers CDs to take a particular action with a greater than 2/3 vote. Isn't that already kind of?
Yeah, I think I was just remaking this clear.
Yeah. So I think
that
that
might be unnecessary.
I think that it's just this part. Actions that CDs may not take within their term include, but are not limited to, increasing the treasury disbursement percentage and using funds from the treasury. I'll just give my quick thoughts. On section B, I don't think it should be there. We've done polls. We've listened to the community. I do not believe the community has consensus that chief delegates cannot do this. And so I don't believe that that belongs there on section B, at least not yet.
I had that intuition, but I didn't do enough polling. So if you're pulling from that and you're connected a little bit more, awesome. Yeah.
But I just want to clarify that the polls are not conclusive. There was only 21 or 22 people that are participating in the polls. So we do not have conclusive data that the community does not want the chief delegates to remove funds from the treasury directly. All right, so I'm going to delete this.
Yeah, using funds from the treasury seems very general. Like, we are technically getting funds from the treasury and we're going to use them, right? So it's like making, token transfers directly from the treasury that are not going through the traditional distribution process. Anyway, it just seemed a bit general to me.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to make this yellow, right?
That would be an ad, so it'd still be yellow.
Yeah. Okay, now we move on to dispute resolution and some new stuff in here. Its scope is limited to disputes inside Eden that are affecting the integrity of the system and or the ability for the Eden community to fulfill its stated mission. This can include violations regarding the induction process, civil checks in the first round of election, video upload,
Failure to upload. I mean, failure to upload video, or, I mean, video upload.
And different forms of vote buying, and toxicity towards other members. My comment is we should replace the word toxicity, which is more subjective than publicly insulting other members repeatedly, which is also subjective, but it's less subjective than just the word toxicity, in my view.
Yeah. I mean, I think conflict is healthy if it's kept within, certain, there's a way to have healthy conflict, and we want people to discuss, and we want to have different opinions. And if you don't agree with me, I can call you toxic, and not necessarily a good word, in my opinion.
Yeah,
What is
agree with the
repeatedly?
improvement.
All right.
Is repeatedly enough of a definition? Repeatedly? Is that more than once? Is that just twice?
As judged by the jury.
Okay.
I think there's a way of turning this into a constructive and positive statement, that we're saying the same thing, but actually speaking more towards what we're wanting. So if members become, destructive and harming the progress in the constructive environment, then that's kind of what we're trying to judge. And it's hard to do that. So we talked about this a little bit before, and I think we can actually point to a set of common logical fallacies.
I got it up.
Yes. So I think if we're saying what is a challenge, we could point to these and say, if you're clearly conducting logical fallacies in our community, which is causing us to be less productive and less constructive and less creative, then we can take you to arbitration and say, hey, you're breaking these rules as defined by this list of fallacies. So then instead of saying you could be judged by just doing whatever, now we're saying if you're breaking some of these, clear sets of community agreements, that could trigger an arbitration. So anyway, it's just an idea, throwing it out there and seeing where we can run with it.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. But we don't have much time, and we need to find a good source of truth for that.
I think we just put that in because it's not necessarily about insulting other members specifically. It could be what you just alluded to, which is spreading mistruth. It's not necessarily an insult.
Slander,
Exactly. Yeah.
slanderous.
Ad hominem, as it was declared. Yeah. So attacking the person, not the idea, and stuff like that.
Slanderous and other
Logical
fallacies. Slanderous behavior.
I think repeatedly is a little bit weird. Publicly insulting other members repeatedly, and just say if you're doing this, then it can pull you to arbitration.
Yeah.
Okay. I personally think this one's really important. Hopefully it will encourage a change. And I think we've already seen an example of that when I posted today. There was someone insulting another member. I let them know that we're considering this, and he deleted his message, and he said he went to go meditate. So a little data point that shows that this will be helpful.
That's a very good response. Meditation can very much help.
Okay.
If you had admin, we'd remove a lot of the necessity for this bylaw.
All right. So this is the last one, right? Yeah. The last change we have is we already talked about juries, all delegates, keeping it open for possible L2 delegates in the future.
Well, all
right.
delegates except chief delegates would include L2 if there's an L3.
Say it again.
All delegates could be L1, L2, except chief delegates. So even if we have 2 rounds, it could still be considered all delegates except chief delegates.
Right.
So 3 rounds. Yeah.
Cool.
And maybe just scroll down a sec to make sure there's no other reference to the jury selection and being only L1, because there may.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there we go. Right there, yeah.
5 delegates, excluding.
Or you could, probably 5. Yeah, sure.
let's see.
And just highlight that bad boy.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. So we've gone through it once. Great job, everyone. Now I think we should talk about the Treasury disbursement rate. And I'm going to make a case for what I think we should do. And then we'll have a healthy debate, and hopefully we'll find a resolution. So if you guys will allow me to go, is everyone okay with that?
Are you reading off the page?
No. Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna stop scrolling. I'm not reading off the page.
Shall we read off the page?
Yeah. So I was gonna bring up the bylaw that I'm looking for. That says that the chief delegates can reduce right there.
It's number 11 you're looking for. Go down. It's just grayed out a little bit.
No, I'm looking for this.
Okay.
So first, I just want to introduce that us chief delegates, we've been talking, and we feel like 10% is a good number for the next set of chief delegates. If there's 5 chief delegates next election, the total EOS earned will be slightly less than the total EOS that we earned. If there's 4 chief delegates next election, it will be slightly more. So we think that it's a really good middle of the road. And so I believe we have consensus on that. So, but before I move on, can we just officially signal that we have consensus on 10%?
Actually, I heard Chris say 11 at the start of this call, and that sounds more appealing to me.
I was just basically stating that
only because I
open.
11. You know,
it's a good number. Yeah. I just want to make it really clear that the intention here wasn't to like shortchange future chief delegates and somehow benefit ourselves at the expense of everybody else, because this has been thrown around. We've been like kind of dragged through the mud a bit in this sort of smear campaign against our character and lack of judgment. And maybe I'm taking it a bit personal because I think I've had a lot of them directed directly at me. And I just want to make it clear, like, that's not the intention. Like, so if it's like some huge, if 10 is too low in some people's minds, then I'm willing to move. I think 10's fair. I think it's still plenty. There's still this idea that we want to increase the runway of this community for as long as possible. But I just wanted to throw it out there that if there was a huge, because I didn't participate in that previous discussion you guys all had, and then I said that prior to understanding. So that's the only reason I threw it out there. I think Waxy, you were more on the let's keep it low. So maybe we should try to, if 10 is agreed and it's still sufficiently high, then there's no reason to.
I think it is
more than that. I just want to make it really clear that no intention to shortchange future delegates at all. That's
well, that's why I also like 11 is because it will be slightly higher than what we received. So
it also 10 may be slightly higher if there's 4 chief delegates.
Right, but we are 5, so it's the same. If something repeats, then yeah,
it'll be a lot higher actually. If it's 4 chief delegates, it's like 15 over 15,000 EOS, and we got like 12. And then if it's 4 or 5 chief delegates, it's like 11,000 and change. Just to be clear.
No, I think we got 14, Chris.
Did we? Let me check. Yeah. Maybe you're right.
Well, hold on. I thought I was backing your idea for 11, Chris. Are you on the 10 wagon or the 11 wagon?
I don't think it was an official idea from Chris, Reiki.
I prefer 10 if I'm like fully transparent. I think 10 is a better runway, but I didn't catch the context of that. We were getting beaten to death about having it be too low. So that's why I was willing to be somewhat flexible. So I'll leave it to others on flexibility, but let me confirm to your point. So I'll stop talking while I have a look here. I was also just to say, and I hadn't completed this, but we have time, by the way. This doesn't need to be a bylaw.
Well, then Justin's
no, but I'm going to propose.
Javi, Waxo, what do you guys say?
What?
Well, what are Javi's and Waxo's stances?
Javier, you can go first.
Well, I've got like a moderate view to this. I think that 5 is our lower bound, 15 is the max limit. 10 to me seems like a good number. I think that we have to find the balance between being able to make use of funds in the present while also securing the future. I think CDs need to look ahead several terms, like we did with the OPEX account. We've got enough funds for several months or more, more than a year, almost 2 years. So, we want to make sure that we're not using the treasury in a way where we're not being considerate of the next set of delegates. I also think that we've seen a lot of interest with the increase in the treasury, and I think it's very positive for Eden. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in the community around this and how we make a decision now that might affect the next set of CDs and how that could be somewhat unfair. If we drop the treasury, the disbursement rate, there's no way they can increase it unless they go through the bylaw ratification process. So one option, I'm not saying this is the best way, but one option we have is to suggest 10% to the next set of CDs. We can even create an MSIG for them to sign saying this is what we think you should do, but then also trust that the next set of CDs will be prudent and will not want to burn through the entire treasury, and will also find that nice middle ground without us making that decision for them or affecting them right at the end of our term. That might be a way of signaling, we trust the process, we trust the next group of CDs. We think that the treasury disbursement rate's too high, but we don't want to limit you guys by doing this ourselves right as we exit and kind of capping it. So, it allows the election to play through with the ability to have 15. If that's what they believe, the elected delegates, they can still do that. And if they say, no, 15 is too high, we need to lower it, then they still have the ability to do that midterm. So kind of like deferring this to after the election until we have consensus in the broader community, and then say, okay, this is, the true representation of what the community feels the disbursement rate should be with all the new information we have. So it's just an option. I'm not saying we need to do that, but I think
I love it because it's an awesome way to play the game. Because in the election, one of the campaign points is, are you going to sign the MSIG or not? So really, it's all the members using our consensus process that's actually deciding, do we want it to be 10, what the previous chief delegates recommended, or do we want to leave it 15? And it's up to the community to actually decide, and they can campaign on, not signing it. And if the community picks them, awesome. The community chose to leave it at 15. So it's a way of kind of like exercising the fractal governance process for an idea. And is that idea, should we have 10 or 15?
The other thing to point out, though, it will be 15 for the first distribution.
Exactly.
And it is a bit of a dereliction of duty. So I understand to use the process, but it is within our power right now to exercise our responsibility as leaders. So if we choose not to, yes, but we are empowered and trusted with the last set of election, people who put us in power here, to make the best decisions. So, part of me is like, yeah, it's neat to play the game. The other part is we have played the game, and that's why we've been given this responsibility to make this decision and not just kick the can.
That's true. This is explicitly, if you go down to 11, it's an entire article talking about our power to reduce our disbursement. So it is part of the game for us to act on this. I see your point, Chris.
So could I jump in here? I do support what Javier and Reiki are saying. And my counter to Chris's point is that this bylaw is inappropriate. The reason, one of the big reasons why I joined Eden is because of the propose and ratify process. And I feel like this bylaw violates that original ethos of Eden. And I don't think we should use it. But I'm personally okay with having it in there. I do understand that in emergency situations to preserve the treasury, it's helpful, I suppose, to have it on there. But I do think it creates a moral hazard. As we've seen, I think most of the contention has been around this bylaw. And so, yes, it's part of the game, but should it be part of the game is what I'm bringing up.
Yes.
I would suggest to remove it as part of our suggestions too. But that does create a point of contention where it also diverges from what it currently is. So it might not pass.
So originally when we were discussing to put it down to 5%, it was because we were allowing the chief delegates to take money from the treasury put it into the OPEX bucket to help fund the DAO structure of Eden. So therefore, the chief delegates would have a greater capability to spend Eden funds on Eden development, not necessarily from their own pockets. They would then be left with 5% to spend how they wished. So giving them a greater opportunity. Since we're not doing that anymore, I don't think, I still think a reduction is important. What we're trying to take into consideration is the future chief delegates and the fairness of the process while maintaining or ensuring the longevity of our process itself without insured funding. So if we keep it high at 15% and let that go through, then we might be benefiting the next chief delegates, but 5 chief delegates ahead of them will be at a substantially less advantageous position, and we may have a much lower participation in the Eden election.
But you're assuming the next chief delegates will not be prudent and have the same concerns that you and
I haven't said anything about what their concerns or them being prudent. I've just said they're going to have 15% if we left it that way, hypothetically.
All right. Maybe we just bring this one to a vote.
We have an MSIG. They can sign an MSIG to go to 10.
I haven't finished my point yet.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So Wax, maybe after you finish your point, if no one else, because we've all spoken on this, we can just take it to a vote, see what our...
Yeah, that sounds good. Right. So if we leave it at 15%, we are a detriment to the future chief delegates ahead of the next chief delegates, ahead of them every single time. If we lower it to a certain degree, we are less of a detriment to the future chief delegates. So there is a balance between doing something radical now to benefit the next chief delegates without a funding source guaranteed. So I propose we put it around 10%, which is in between the most extreme and the lowest percentage we were happy to give them when we decided that we were going to allow them to use the treasury more effectively via the OPEX. So I'm happy with 10%. I'm sticking with that.
And just to give it some numbers, because that always helps, I think, with decision objective data, based on the numbers we did before, if we leave it at 15% and it remains there for the next 2 terms, at the end of the 6th term, there will be 171,000 EOS left in the treasury. If we reduce it to 10% and it remains there until the end of the 6th term, there will be 240,000 EOS, 241,000 left in treasury.
I have new information to add that's really relevant. Part of our rest of our timeline and our term is to have a proposal that we push to the ENF and ask them for 500K. We haven't talked about this yet because we've been focused on the bylaws. So I know the next session we're going to get into this. But what we do is if we make the suggestion to future CDs to change it down to 10%, simultaneously we put out an MSIG to the ENF to fund us more, so we can move faster, pay better, and attract higher talent and get the excitement and run with that momentum we've been building and really bring EOS back. Like, we have that momentum. Let's freaking run with it. If they want to supercharge that, then they can signal that by, agreeing to that MSIG. And then the next set of CDs have that full picture. We have more funding coming in. We know what disbursement to set it at, and then they can, approve or deny. And again, we let the collective intelligence of the fractal governance process kind of weed this out through who the next delegates are,
And maybe that's an argument to lower it to 10, because then we expand the runway. But then if the ENF does add 500K, 10% of 500K is now bigger, more than we got. Yeah. So it incentivizes them to push that along and really follow up with the ENF and make it happen.
So what you're even suggesting is, but if we change it to 10 before the ENF signals that, so we have this power to change it. So we don't have to discuss this through the bylaws. So check it out. If next week we get that MSIG out and ENF acts quickly and we can ask them to, and they give that donation, then we move it down to 10 because now we have the whole picture. And now it's not
even lower than 10. Even lower than 10. If they throw another 500K in there, then there would be a broad support.
And that might be part of the donation strategy too. We can have that conversation with ENF and see what numbers they like and if they want it to be changed, etc. But maybe they're like, hey, we want to airdrop 69 million tokens. Let's keep it at 15 so we can push a lot more tokens out. Like, okay, exactly. Maybe that's what they want to do. Because all it is more funding to chief delegates to serve themselves, serve their projects, give out to the community, etc. It just helps EOS grow, attract more momentum. And the ENF has the tokens. So if you look at it that way, 15% is just like, yeah, let's keep it there and let's just keep funneling it. We'll set up a pay distribution. Like if they have that, then there's no reason to change it. Then we're accelerating, right?
Well, this is one of the why that bylaw to reduce is useful when trying to pursue funding. So the ENFs ones, we want you to use your funding well, and we want you to stretch it out. And if we give you 500K and you have it at 15%, they might like, look, guys, it's just too much. Like you're just going to drain it way too fast. You'll be back. You'll follow that logarithmic curve of decline. So it's like, we'll give it to you, but we'd like you to reduce it to X percentage to create this runway. And then we say, okay, great. That was sort of part of it, right? Like we got ours with a day and a bit before our actual distribution from B1, and it was on our last term. But in this case, it could be part of the negotiation. Look, we're able to reduce the rate. It's within our rule or within the bylaws. And now let's have a conversation. What would you like to give us? Okay, great. That's what you're going to do. And we'll prudently reduce it so we don't burn through it too fast. And then that becomes part of the negotiation, and we can do that.
Chris, do you want to invite Eve to next call to discuss this?
I can try. Yeah, sure. I mean, hopefully we can all invite him. I think. Don't leave. Let's just all tag him, and let's all try to. I'll PM him. You guys, we can all PM him and see if we can get him to join us and discuss it.
I think it's one of those like responsibilities and rights of chief delegates should also be to seek out funding for the treasury, right? Like this has got to happen in order to keep this thing alive, right? If not,
then is that something we add to the bylaws?
Well, it could be like examples of stuff that CDs should do is like seek out treasury donations. And the other thing for the bylaws that I noticed is that it says that we're able to reduce the disbursement rate, but it should say something like during the a current election or current term, like midway. Like I think midterm was not a good word because that's kind of like saying right in the middle. But during an ongoing election, you can reduce the disbursement rate.
Election cycle.
I mean, I think like, yes, we all share this sense of prudency and we all think that it's too high right now and we want to secure the future, but I trust that the next set of CDs will also have that same concern, right? Like they'll be like, so it's like, oh, we're taking that decision for them and kind of limited that. Whereas like, we trust that they'll also have that same sense of, responsibility for the future terms of this. At least that's what I expect.
The data that you shared, Chris, assumes that the distribution won't change in 6 terms. And I think that it will likely change. And the chief delegates will likely have the same concerns that we're having here.
You were just advocating to remove this opportunity for them to lower it. So without this, then they can't lower it.
It's most likely they'll want to add. Like what will most likely take place is the next chief delegates will say, look, we want to keep the next set. This is what happened when it went from 5 to 15, right? It's like, we need to bump up the reduction rate. So a set of chief delegates said, let's raise it to 15. We'll put it forward and see if the next, and so that's why, I mean, that's what will probably happen is if anything, the next set will say, look, we want the next ones to also have what we had. So we're going to increase it to 11%. And maybe that's a neat way where there's this opportunity to follow a process to increase the draw rate, which I think is the biggest contentious point because that's the theft piece. When we're pulling more from at least the narrative of theft, right? When you pull more from the treasury, that's taken from everyone. If we're reducing the distribution rate, we can argue that's actually adding. We're like giving to the longevity of the community. So does that make sense, Jesse? Is that kind of?
Yeah, but like if we're proposing to reduce the distribution rate, in this example, it would be 2 disbursements of 15%, which is a very small loss compared to the gain of avoiding this moral hazard that comes up by reducing it in the middle of the term. This is my view.
I don't think I think my understanding of a moral hazard is a little different. Moral hazards are usually where you're conflicted morally to make the right decision versus what you're sort of being coerced to do, which is actually negative. So if anything, this is a negative moral hazard. We're being suggested by the community, you should not lower it. And we're suggesting, but in the best interest of the longevity of this ecosystem, of our treasury in the longer term view, we want to reduce it and we get nothing for it. So there's no moral hazard for us to make the decision. If anything, it's a negative one because we're suffering sentiment and reputational damage by those who don't agree with it. I see your point. I just don't think
maybe moral hazard is not the right word. So let me say it just more explicitly. It incites emotions of jealousy.
Perfectly fair. And that feelings are important. I'm looking at the numbers, and I just look at that drop-off rate and what we end up with if we leave it on the logarithmic curve, which 15% is, and I want to flatten it out a touch because I think that's the prudent thing for remember the old bylaw, the mission statement used to say, add value to EOS and ensure this organization's continuity. That was a bylaw. It was removed. And I think I liked that bylaw. I want to ensure this organization's continuity, and it's predicated on the budget. I mean,
and how exciting if the election was all focused on this, people being able to bring their perspective to it and for it to matter. E.g., let's not make it for them. Let's put up the proposal. Let's not sign it, and leave it up to the election day, because that would be really interesting. I think this is an active thing in the community. Like, let's run with this energy and use the fractal democracy process to sort out what the answer is.
I'd like to see the data.
And we'd have more information come election day too. So we'd be wiser as an ecosystem, and we're using our governance process to make this tough decision. Let's put our tools to work,
One thing I'll add quickly, I am going to add, I've been working, I haven't finished it, I'm so busy with the smart proxy, but I'll get it done and we have time. Looking at the USD value of distribution. So not just the EOS value, how much money in USD has each chief delegate actually received? Because that last distribution we got was the lowest USD rate of any chief delegate prior. Another thing to keep in mind. So, but I'll quantify that to add just more data. I think we're not quite there yet, maybe to make a decision today. We don't need to today. Especially if it's not going to be a bylaw. If it's going to be a bylaw, okay, fine. But if we're just going to use that rule that currently exists, we do have up until the election to make that decision. So I can add more data.
If just hypothetically we chose to propose a 10%, that's not in the bylaws.
It's not required because it's a reduction, so it's using the current rules. Yeah.
So I think that so I acknowledge the data that you shared, Chris, is fair and it paints one scenario. I think another scenario we can look at is the next chief delegates gets one round of a 15%. They accept the MSIG, they put it to 10, and then it's 10. And the difference, it's going to be, I'm guessing, just slightly more in the scenario where they get a distribution of 15 in the first distribution of the next round. And that small difference saves us from these negative emotions.
I still think it's a dereliction of duty. And if anything, if you want them to have more money, which that will do because it's 15 and then 10. And if that's the question that we're going to end up with more, then I'd rather make it 11 and not derelict.
Look at this comment from Brandon. I think he solved it.
CDs.
CDs could be expected to reduce the rates. Again, we're running on the next election and they have this ability. So it is up to, the membership to decide.
That's not how it works though. As soon as the election's over, the distribution is calculated based on the current percentage. So the first percentage, the first distribution will be whatever we leave it at. And whether it's 15 or 10 or 11 or whatever, that's what they'll get. There's no opportunity for them to execute.
Okay.
Right. So if we leave it at 15, their first one will be 15 on election day because it's right after election day.
No, but they're.
So how much would that be if we got 500K donation from ENF on top of what we have, and they got 15%? That would be a ridiculous amount of income for the first month. Probably more.
Yeah, and I think that reduces the chance of getting a donation. Like I think the ENF will expect prudent use of funds as any token holder would. And so I think that's the moral hazard.
So maybe there's a both end here. What you're suggesting is we could change it to 10% and we can still run election day based on changing it more with more information by how much ENF comes in with, because of course they're going to, we're doing awesome things. Why wouldn't they? So it is already going to be something. 10% is a reduction. It will probably need to be reduced more with another 500K coming in. So this is already something that's alive in the community. And your first distribution is going to be big. So this is an exciting election day anyway. So it's just running with the hype narrative. I love it. And it's a both end. Is that kind of where we found consensus here?
I'm okay with that. That sounds good to me.
Gosh, she's awesome.
Way to go, Brandon. But what Brandon added is that L1s can raise it. So that could be an interesting bylaw for the next CDs to consider. Is if they can add that addition for layer 1 delegates to be able to raise funding for chief delegates.
Yeah,
that could be So anyway, or even all delegates, but then they're given.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. What mechanism by which can the treasury be pulled from outside of the distribution rate? That's what we've really been debating a lot in the community, right? Is can you do that? First of all, is it theft? I don't think so. But regardless, maybe there is a mechanism there that just involves more of the group consensus to do that. And that is an interesting bylaw to keep pursuing.
And we haven't really taken into account that chief delegates can now use treasury funding, which will reduce their future disbursements. So if they move treasury to OPEX to fund circles or anything else, then they're going to get a reduction in pay that way as well.
Well, then they'll probably be really wise with how they spend that to make sure that how they spend it is having some function that's going to increase the amount that's in it. So if those two are in balance, then they're getting a raise. If
We are
they're
completely aligned
out
with
of
that.
balance, they're getting a pay decrease. And that's kind of a very interesting game dynamic there, is it just aligns the incentives to grow the treasury and spend it in a way that's going to keep growing it. And you do that by scaling your efforts, you know? If you hire a department and all they do is drain money but don't add any money, then you're going to probably nix them, and that's how it might work, you know. So it is kind of interesting in that way. So maybe
I tried to communicate. I tried to communicate that in chat a few times, but I got called a liar. So good job we putting in some bylaws.
I know this is a long day, but maybe we can do like one round of a closeout with whatever thoughts we have and probably call it.
Is that all the bylaws done?
I think we did it. Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. That was easy.
Well, I mean, I think none of it was really much changes. We just kind of went with what was. So.
Yeah, I think we just added some important explicit additions that have already been that already exist, but they weren't explicit.
Thank you for everyone who joined us today in chat. I really appreciate your input. Appreciate you listening over such a long period of time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good work, everyone. So for those bylaws, we'll just have to clean them up and actually propose just a final like view-only doc to community. And then at some point, we really should be using the smart contracts for this and uploading a PDF or something to IPFS. Yeah. And there is a contract action to actually put these on chain. We've kind of always missed that. Maybe Javier, you can kind of help us do that at some point. We have time, but I think we should make use of that functionality at some point.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sure, happy to.
Couldn't agree more.
I don't know if I can handle it for another term.
Did we agree on the treasury disbursement rate, or where do we stand? I'm still wondering.
I think we're at 10.
Yeah, more data to come. I think it'll help to know the USD value. That'll help us just give us another data point to consider, because I think that's a bit ambiguous. But yeah.
On that point, our Spend Explorer takes daily averages for EOS every day and then calculates the USD value based on a daily average. It gives you an estimate of what the income was in USD terms. So you can generate a graph and a report really easily in USD terms. If that's helpful, I'll be happy to share that with you.
Does that go back in time?
Yeah, all the way to the first election. So we've got
doing it manually
on every day, all the way, over a year.
That happens.
And
I've been doing this manually, going through my log because I've been a CD a few times. So I'm looking at my own to see how much it was. And well, let's talk offline, and you can save me much time. And I've already wasted a bit. So great.
Yeah, just go to spending.eden.eoscommunity.org, click income, and then select US dollars instead of EOS. You'll see the report.
And where we got to with the percentage as well was we were going to move forward with that MSIG to the ENF for 500K. Try to bring Yves onto the call next week and have a dialogue with him. That would be awesome. And out of that, an MSIG. If he doesn't join, we'll still out of that call, we'll have an MSIG we put on chain. And if they sign it within our term, then that's going to influence what we change the percentage to. So we don't have to answer this question yet. We still have a little bit more time to see how the game unfolds.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess we'll wait to the last pretty much 48 hours or something before the election.
Which would be a lot more energetic. Excellent. Yeah. Cool. Anything else we want to share before we close today?
So the bylaws are due tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. I know in previous, Chris has been the one to kind of finalize it. Chris, are you okay to play that role again this term?
Yes, sir. I'm more than happy to do that. This is cool. You're right, Javier. This is awesome. So USD amounts, I think we're on right now. Election 1 received the most. Then it dropped off greatly. 3 went up, 4 went up a lot. So we should maybe use that as some sort of considerate benchmark as we look at our percentage.
And that's a beautiful story. You see that? It's just slowly increasing in USD value as EOS is dropping in value. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, because it was raised from 5 to 15%.
I guess I'm curious on the data though, because head chief received. So does this include the head chief amount? Like, because the rest of the CDs might have actually been a lot lower.
Yes, it does include the head chief amount.
You can go to by one election on the graph below, right above, on the right. You'll see by all elections or one election, or it says conversion right above it. You select election 1. I think we might need to select year 2021. Sorry, this is a UX issue here. Does that work? Anyway, you can see that Aaron Cox got a lot more funds than the rest. You know, I might have to. This is still happening, guys. But I remember seeing this graph. Something might be
Not
wrong.
updating it. Well, we'll look at it and try to we'll work on that and then try to present it, because that's one thing. This will include Aaron's, and he shouldn't get that.
Oh, there you go.
And then the other, down here.
Aaron.
Oh, that's Aaron's right there.
Got a lot more because he was head chief delegate.
Right. And this is looks like election 2.
Edgar got 1 disbursement as head chief delegate, which he then returned.
He shared it with the others. So that was the manual piece I was also changing to share that with the other ones for election 2. So I think this is also slightly higher because of that. Maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, very interesting.
We're really interested in everyone giving us feedback on this tool. We want to improve it. It's still work in progress. Everyone take a look. If there's something wrong, let us know. We'll fix it. Thank you for the support with this project.
So I just I found one thing, Javier. I just want to remind you, like, if you claim your funds into a different account, so you know there's that functionality, it's not showing up on the expense report.
Well, there's actually 2 transactions. One's a withdrawal, the other one's a token transfer. We're taking the withdrawal as income. Now the transfer, you'd have to then classify that as an eat-in expense. So it might show up as uncategorized. And this is that we've actually got a development environment for this, which has got a whole bunch of updates. I haven't pushed those updates through. But yes, we found a few bugs. We're working on this. And I really appreciate everyone's feedback. But you should be able to transfer directly to someone else's account. That should count as income for you, even though it never reached your account. And then you'd have to classify that expense as something that, categorize that expense and describe what it was for. So there's a second step that's necessary for it to show up as an expense. You'll see it in your list of expenses. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic here.
Yeah, sorry, that was like a minor point.
No, I just saw this last comment from Brandon. I'm like, yes.
Actually,
Perfect way to leave us off before Christmas, right?
Magocracy, ruled by a government composed primarily of magicians, sages, sorcerers, wizards, witches, and other magic users.
Well, I think we've certainly been we're all magic users here this evening. So congratulations, gentlemen.
Yes.
I hope everyone has a nice Christmas.
Or holidays, wherever you're at. But for the
yes.
Christmas story, it's kind of interesting because that is an example of consensus. Like, Christmas is literally the convergence of Christianity and paganism, like confumbled together to try to make peace with an empire that was both. So that's kind of like consensus in action, giving us these weird holidays that no longer make sense. So anyway, something we can go celebrate this weekend as we see centuries of consensus.
Brilliant. All right, I'm going to end the call. Is it Chris, would you like to do a final sign out, or are you done?
Sure. Thanks everyone for joining. Really excited and grateful for your feedback. Thanks everyone for participating in the comments. We will see you next week. Go Eden and go EOS. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.